Grandma, are you out of your mind? Don't touch that with your filthy hands. The harsh voice of Sujin, the head saleswoman, echoed through the gleaming marble floors of the elite Gangnam luxury boutique. She violently snatched a breathtakingly expensive silk coat right out of Madame Bay's frail hands. The old woman stayed perfectly calm. She looked down at her hands, which were clean, but wrinkled and calloused from years of hard work. I just wanted to see the price, Madame Bay said quietly. It would look beautiful on my granddaughter. Sujin burst into a mocking, theatrical laugh, looking around at the wealthy customers to invite them into her cruel joke. The price? Grandma, this coat costs more than your entire house. The seafood market is across the street. I think you took a wrong turn. In a world obsessed with appearances, the luxury showroom erupted in quiet giggles. They looked at the old woman's faded, oversized cardigan, her worn-out sneakers, and the squeaky shopping cart she was pulling, treating her like a piece of trash that had blown in from the street. Sujin snapped her fingers at a junior staff member. Call security. Get this beggar out of here before she leaves a smell on our new spring collection. Madame Bay gripped the handle of her cart. She didn't yell. She didn't argue. She just stared deeply into Sujin's eyes. What the cruel saleswoman didn't know was that those few sentences had just sealed her fate. Suddenly, a young trainee named Minji rushed forward from the back room. She was out of breath, carrying a tray of expensive tea, and stepped directly between Sujin and the old woman. Her voice trembled as she bowed respectfully. Wait, please, Miss Sujin. There's no need for security. Sujin glared at the young girl, her eyes narrowing into slits. Minji, what do you think you're doing? Step away from the garbage. Minji looked at Madame Bay. She saw her own grandmother in the woman's tired, kind eyes. Taking a deep breath, Minji bowed slightly but stood her ground. She is a guest in our store. I will take care of her. She turned to Madame Bay, her voice dropping to a gentle, warm tone. Ma'am, I'm so sorry. If you'd like, I can show you our catalog in the lounge. I have some warm citron tea for you. The room went dead silent. The head saleswoman exploded. Minji, who told you to speak? You're just a trainee. You serve high-end VIPs, not street rats. Say one more word to her, and you are fired. Right here. Right now. Minji froze. She desperately needed this job. A flash of fear crossed her eyes, but then she looked at Madame Bay, who was watching her intently. Minji spoke softly but clearly. A customer is a customer. I'm sorry, Miss Sujin, but I won't let you treat an elder this way. Sujin pointed at the door, screaming, Then pack your things, you're done, and take this old hag with you. Minji bowed deeply to Sujin, accepting her fate. She gently took Madame Bay's arm. Let's go, ma'am. I know a nice bakery down the street. I'll buy you a pastry. But Madame Bay didn't move. She looked at Minji, a tiny, almost invisible smile forming on her lips. She patted the young girl's hand gently. Madame Bay's name wasn't just Grandma. The faded clothes she wore weren't a sign of poverty. They were the very same clothes she wore 40 years ago when she started her first small business on the streets of Seoul. Madame Bay reached into the pocket of her worn-out cardigan and pulled out an ultra-rare, solid black titanium VIP phone. Without breaking eye contact with Sujin, she dialed a single number. Her voice suddenly dripped with immense, undeniable authority. Mr. Choi, I am on the second floor of my mall, in the Aura Boutique. Come down here immediately. Bring the board. Sujin scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. Oh, look, the beggar has a toy phone. What is she going to do? Call the mayor of the homeless? Less than 3 minutes later, arrogance turned into pure terror. The heavy glass doors of the boutique were thrown open violently. 6 men in immaculate black suits stormed into the room, forming 2 neat lines. Behind them, sprinting and sweating profusely, was Mr. Choi, the general manager of the entire Gangnam luxury mall. Sujin's smug smile instantly vanished. Her face went chalk white. She quickly bowed. Director Choi, what is going on? We weren't expecting a corporate inspection today. Mr. Choi completely ignored her. He ran straight past the head saleswoman, stopping directly in front of the homeless old woman. He dropped into a deep, 90-degree bow and stayed there. The 6 suited men did the exact same. His voice shook with respect and absolute fear. Chairwoman Bay, I am so deeply sorry. We didn't know you were conducting a blind inspection of the properties today. The showroom fell into a deafening silence. The wealthy customers dropped their jaws. Sujin's designer clipboard fell from her hands and shattered on the marble floor. Minji gasped, covering her mouth with both hands. The woman they had just thrown out was Chairwoman Bay, the billionaire founder of the Zenith Group, and the sole owner of the entire shopping mall. Madame Bay's posture changed. She was no longer a frail old woman. She stood tall, radiating absolute power. "Stand up, Mr. Choi," she commanded. She slowly walked over to Soo-jin. The squeak of her old sneakers suddenly sounded heavier than combat boots. Soo-jin was trembling, her eyes wide with sheer panic. "Chairwoman, I didn't know. You were dressed like... I thought..." Madam Bay's voice was cold as ice. "You thought what? That because I looked poor? I wasn't human. That because I didn't wear silk? I didn't deserve basic respect?" Soo-jin dropped to her knees, begging and pleading. "Please, madam, I was just trying to protect the store's image. Our VIP clients..." "Stop!" Madam Bay interrupted, looking around the store in absolute disgust. "When I built this company, I sold dumplings on the street. I wore clothes just like this. If you despise people who look like this, you despise me, and you despise the foundation of this entire company." She turned to the general manager. "Mr. Choi, this woman is terminated, effective immediately. Ensure her name is blacklisted from every luxury retail network in Seoul. Someone who sells prejudice has no place selling my brands." Soo-jin burst into tears, sobbing uncontrollably as the very security guards she wanted to call grabbed her arms and escorted her out. The doors closed behind her, leaving nothing but silence. Madam Bay then turned her attention to Minji, who was still shaking in the corner. The coldness in the chairwoman's eyes completely melted away into a warm, gentle gaze. She took Minji's trembling hands. "Today, when everyone else looked at my clothes, you were the only one who looked at my heart. You were willing to lose your job to protect a stranger." Madam Bay looked at Mr. Choi. "The position of head manager for this boutique is now vacant. Give the position to Minji, triple her salary, and pay off any student loans she might have. My company doesn't need people who know how to sell coats. We need people who know how to value human beings." Minji burst into happy tears, bowing repeatedly as the wealthy customers began to clap, deeply humbled by what they had just witnessed. Sometimes, what determines your worth isn't the brand on your jacket, but the kindness in your soul. A job gives you a title, but your character decides how you use it. If you believe that respect should never depend on appearance and that kindness is the most expensive luxury in the world, leave a heart in the comments.